Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of DEI Unmasked Conversations That Bridge, where we're reshaping the conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Have you ever wondered what unfolds when certified diversity professionals step away from the expected calm and start real, unfiltered conversations? Well, you're in luck. My name is Greta Lax, and I'm thrilled to be your host for this episode. Tonight, we're here to talk about navigating the current state of DEI, the challenges as we see them, as well as the opportunities for moving this work forward. The DEI Unmasked podcast is not just a show, it's an invitation to embark on a transformative journey with us. DEI Unmasked is the space where we invite you to peel back the layers, reveal the depth, and engage in authentic dialogue. It is a commitment on our parts to unmasking truths, dismantling stereotypes, and fostering understanding. We would like to make clear that the views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization, company, or entity we may be associated with. Our discussions are personal and meant for entertainment and informative purposes only. For anyone who would like to enable closed captioning, simply navigate to the settings on your viewing platform, since we are streaming to multiple platforms. Additionally, we certainly value your participation and would love to stay connected. In the chat, you'll find a form here before the end of the show where you can share your contact information. And by doing so, you'll get alerts for upcoming sessions, as well as sign up for an upcoming newsletter that we'll be creating. So we're eager to involve you in shaping our future discussions. Please feel free to use the form to share any questions or topic suggestions you'd like us to explore in upcoming episodes as well. DEI Unmasked, as we said, is not just a podcast, it is an invitation. So the five of us are a fantastic team, with each of us contributing for our unique gifts, perspectives, and experiences. You'll notice that across the episodes, we'll be spreading the love and sharing the hosting duties. So you'll get a little flavor for each of our personalities and styles. So I'll be your guide for this evening, keeping the conversation moving and drawing some connections while we go. Although when we're together as a group, there is very little need for external help to keep the ideas flowing. So thank you for joining us, and let's jump right in. And together we'll embark on a journey of unmasking. So again, welcome. What I'd like to do is just take a minute for everybody to go around and briefly introduce ourselves. So I did say I'm Greta Lax, host for the evening. I am an independent coach and consultant, my background in industrial organizational psychology, and that's how I came to the DEI work today. I am a white woman with shoulder-length blonde hair, wearing a gray jacket, red glasses, and sitting in front of bookcases that are full of tchotchkes that are probably meaningful only to me, but I think share a little bit of personality. So from there, I'm going to go next on the list and ask Courtni to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Courtni Hatton. I'm a people and culture professional. Currently, right now, I am in talent acquisition and I am loving it. I have, right now I have box braids. So if you tuned in last time, I did change my hair. I am a medium brown skinned cisgender woman. I am of moderate height and I love all things cheetah print and coffee. And I will now turn it over to Tanasha.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Tanasha Lawcock. Today, I am wearing a gray sweater that has black and fuchsia, my favorite color, lightning bolts all over it. And I'm wearing pink tortoiseshell glasses with some hoop earrings. I am a medium to dark skin toned black woman with a short cropped fade just got my hair cut yesterday, so I was ready for today. So I am here in sunny Phoenix, Arizona, where it is not too warm, but not too cool, and just excited to be here with this group of fabulous folks again today. So now I'm going to turn it over to our next co-host, Chrystal. Go ahead, Chrystal. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Tanasha. My name is Chrystal Edney, and I am a insurance risk management professional as well as a DEI practitioner. Been in the industry, both industries, for over 20 years. And I'm currently residing in lovely small town Irmo, South Carolina. I'll give points to anybody who knows exactly where that is. I am a cisgendered African American female. I am about 5'9" in height, brown skinned, athletic build. That's a little on the fluffy side right now. But yeah, I definitely have an intense passion for DEI and just want to discuss it with my lovely co-hosts here. So I'll turn it over to Leandra. Thank you.
Hi, y'all. I'm Leandra Stanley. I'm a director of diversity and inclusion at a tech company and live in Portland, Oregon. I am 6'1", so I'm not of moderate height. I am quite tall, and I am plus size and light brown skin with big curly brown hair, wearing a red grandpa sweater and a patchwork scarf, and sitting in front of a bookshelf that has plushies up top and then a bunch of diversity and inclusion books on the shelves. And I'm super happy to be with y'all. And I think I'll pass it back to Greta, our lovely host for the evening.
Thank you, ladies. So, folks, for those of you who'd like to learn a little bit more about us, I am going to refer you back to our first episode where we... last month when we got together, we shared a little bit more about our personal stories. So while certainly that will be infused in our conversations going forward, I highly recommend that episode myself. I think it was fantastic and gives you a chance to learn a little bit more about us. In the meantime, one of the things that we'd like to do, that all of us kind of decided that we wanted to do tonight, is just kind of check in. I think the state of the world, the state of where we all are, the time of the year, where we all are in our lives, there's a lot of things that are coming together. And these are very challenging days for a lot of us in a lot of ways, in a lot of different ways. Certainly some more than others, as always, but you know, this has been a really fantastic group for checking in with one another, for supporting one another. And, you know, part of our conversation is just the fact that not everybody has that, right? Not everybody has that opportunity. And not everybody has, you know, is willing and able to share, right? Where they really are sitting today, where they really are in terms of navigating the waters of this work, but also kind of just the state of the world that we're in today. So we really wanted to just give everybody a chance to check in, as much or as little as you like. I kind of told the group a little bit earlier today that I've personally been struggling a little bit. I'm dealing. This has been a rough year health-wise. I am a person who suffers from multiple invisible disabilities, neurodivergent, had some major health crises this year. So coming out of that, in the midst of everything else that's going on, the impact that's had on my work, it's one more of those reasons that I'm incredibly grateful for this group. And it's still not always easy to show up in everything that we are, right? And everything that we're feeling. But we also want this podcast to be a place where we can show up as our real selves. Yeah. So even though I will say that even though that I have been struggling, and sometimes it's hard to show up when you're feeling that way, right? Much less show up on camera and alive for all of social media land who might be turning in. At the same time, knowing that I've got this crew, this group here, is motivation enough to show up. So I'm grateful for the support, and gonna pass the mic and let whoever is willing or interested in speaking up next step up.
I'll check in a little bit because I think in our group chat, we have a group chat, y'all. Of course, we must have a group chat. I also shared about struggling this month and this year. And I think it's so easy for me to forget personally while doing DEI work that this work is deeply personal. And even though I'm not my job, so much of who I am and my marginalized identities is wrapped up in the work that I do. And those moments where there are rejections or roadblocks or hurdles that I run into, it's hard not to take those deeply personally, because when I get a no, it feels like a no to my queer self, to my disabled self, to my Black self, even though it might just be a moment for me to reroute. And so I realized that in the last few months, I've been taking things so personally, and I've been internalizing it all and not really considering like ways that I could be goal setting or rerouting in my like personal life and in my work life. And it's so easy to get lost in the sauce because this work is changed by what's happening in the world. And every time something tragic happens in the world and on the news, I'm thinking, how does this impact my work? How does this impact the people that my work is impacting? And it's so easy to get so overwhelmed by that because every moment and everything that I watch and listen to has something to do with DEI, because DEI is so rooted in our identities and in systemic policies and all of that. And so I have found myself extremely overwhelmed just in the job itself. And then considering all of the other things that happen in life, like grief or holiday woes or it being dark all the time. There are just so many things that are going on. And so this group has really helped me remember that grace and rest are so important, and life doesn't often just give you the rest, you got to demand it. And so it's so powerful to take some time for myself to rest, even if sometimes there's a little bit of guilt associated with like resting and not being productive. That recuperating and rejuvenating is productive and is going to make me a better person tomorrow, because if I'm not demanding rest of myself, my body will demand it later. And as someone who also has multiple invisible disabilities, like the body will tell you and will give you the business if you don't take care of it. And so, yeah, these last few months and this time of year has been quite a roller coaster, and what a important time to be reminded that community and friends and just that there is someone but beyond me to support me. I don't have to stand on my own all the time. And I think, yeah, that's where I'll punctuate my check-in for now.
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. Unless Courtney or Chrystal, you'd like to go first. Always want to make sure. All right. Well, I definitely hear what you're saying, Greta, and what you're sharing, Leandra. And it's one of those things where it doesn't matter what time of the year, like we say, life be lifing. Like, I mean, it's just happening. It's coming at you no matter what you do. And so you're trying to think about how you're reacting and how much of it you're taking in. You know, the point that you make about giving yourself an opportunity to rest is so important, Leandra, because it's like they say, the body keeps the score. And giving ourselves that time to just kind of recharge. And I definitely have felt just like, I don't feel down. I just feel just kind of like tired. Like, oh, it's still 2023. But then I'm also like, 2023 is almost over. It's just been such a long year. I mean, we have all of these things going on. There's genocides taking place in multiple places around the world, and just taking in all of this information. And I find the importance of being mindful of how I'm spending my time. Like, I love LinkedIn. I have so many just tremendous connections on that platform and a real sense of community. One of the things I have learned I have to be mindful about is how much time I spend on LinkedIn and what I'm taking in, because sometimes I just need to take a pause. And some people say, well, yeah, but you can't run from reality. You have to face it. Well, I'm a Black woman. So hello, I've never been able to run from reality. Facts. So that's number one. But number two, because I have OCD and social anxiety, and my anxiety can get so bad, I have to find ways to make sure that my brain is still functioning at a level where I can get things done, because I also have, my family. And in addition to just having adult children, I have an almost 30-year-old son who's mentally 5 years old. So I don't have the luxury of being able to opt out of making sure that he's cared for. I still have to be able to do those things. So I just try to be really mindful about that. And thank goodness for therapy. I've said it now. I'll say it probably on this podcast multiple times. It is just my saving grace. I now have a therapist who is a Black woman. And when I tell you, it has been just the most transcendent experience of my life. You don't realize the emotional tax of always having to explain why something that happens to you is tied to the color of your skin, or is tied to the fact that I'm a pansexual woman, but I have the privilege of being married to a cisgender, straight guy. There are so many just different layers that people don't understand, but having a therapist who understands just the Black parts of things, like the things that are just Black people stuff, it has been so nice and so freeing. So I think that has really been my saving grace, and one of the reasons why I'm functioning, and I'll use that term loosely, why I'm functioning as well as I am cognitively at this stage, because I do feel tired, but I'm still finding, that energy, and always happy to be here with the four of you, and loving that we get to share these wonderful and transformative conversations that we've been having all year, with other people. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Just kind of feel like Hammy from Over the Hedge when he drinks soda sometimes. I'm a crazy rabbit squirrel. I'm just kind of, I'm just here. It's fine. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Did anybody else want to check in before I? Okay. So, right, I think there's so much in there, in your shares, right? The importance of giving grace to ourselves, of rest during these times. I agree with you, Leandra. Sometimes, it can, you feel guilty, taking a rest. You feel guilty. And I think you said that too, Tanasha, taking a break from social media, because there are a lot of folks that can't take a break. And, depending on our contexts and our privileges in those contexts, and that, can add to that sense of, of guilt as well. If we're not managing that well, and we have to take care of ourselves to be able to continue to do this work. I think it's what you talked about, Tanasha, is really important, being mindful about how we're spending our time, and where and how we're expending our resources. I've seen some great conversations about that too on LinkedIn when I was not taking a break. But to at least know that those conversations are happening amongst the folks who are doing this work, I think that that's really important for each of us, because there are a lot of folks who are burnt out already. There are folks who dove into this work, and they're not just the people, but sometimes just the times that we're doing this work, that we take it like it's a sprint. And there is nothing about this work, right, that is not a marathon. There may be short-term wins. There may be short-term, kind of gains that we can work towards, but the work itself is marathon. and in some ways multiple marathons. So I think those are really critical. Is there anything else that each of you uses for that aspect? Tanasha, you talked about finding the right therapist, which is hard. That is hard. That is a job in and of itself.
Well, Greta, I wanted to backtrack and make a comment about something that you just mentioned to our audience. I don't know if anybody has seen the first episode, but we wanted this to also be a safe space for you guys out there that are DEI practitioners who may be in the trenches every day, seeing the ins and outs, the wins and the losses, and the frustrating points. Because that's one thing that isn't talked about a whole lot is mental health and self-care. And especially if you're a person of one of these marginalized communities, you're going to be triggered at some point. So that's something that we don't have the space to talk about really in the work environment, because it's designed that way, of course, but there's so much work to do. You really don't have the time nor the resources or maybe the people to talk to about these things. So this we wanted to kind of bring that to the forefront, and then also allow our audience, you guys, to speak your piece about things and have a safe space to kind of talk about things, and maybe talk about ideas or something that you encounter that maybe you're trying to find a solution for. So not only is this a safe space for the five of us, but for all of you out there in the audience as well. But yeah, the mental health part, I think that's really important. A short story. I have a friend who contacted me like this week, and she is a DEI, I'll just say a project manager. She's like a practitioner, but she's doing it on a contract basis. She's a project manager, and she revealed to me that she, a few days ago, walked away from her job because she was feeling like she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Basically, it was a situation where her supervisor was gaslighting her, telling her to implement practices and procedures that were quite obviously harmful. And she just wasn't going to do it. As a I'll just say a female from a marginalized community. I won't identify her race in the event that she may be watching this, but it's just sad to me that she's so dedicated and loves this, been doing it for years and years, for decades, and she has to walk away to preserve herself, to save herself. And it's just so many, I hear so many stories like this where people are having to walk away from the work and go back to whatever it is they were doing before they did the work, or maybe find an alternative to do instead of the DEI work, because it's so taxing on mental health. And that's so unfortunate. It shouldn't be like this. It should be a collective effort where we can all pour in to get an undesired result. But it's just, I'm hearing more and more stories about people walking away from their DEI roles because it's just, there's no, for myriads of reasons, but it's kind of like it's happening in droves. And I'm noticing that's something I'm noticing that's happening currently with DEI.
You're 100% right, Chrystal. And the sad part about it is you see it for people who have been in the role less than a year. I was one of those people and just was not the right fit for what I was trying to do and what I wanted to accomplish. And so I walked away from a role that initially for me, I thought was really going to be a dream role, because of the understanding that I have of what goes on as a member of so many marginalized communities. It was important for me to be able to really get underneath things and get into the DEI work in really meaningful ways that didn't feel performative to me. And so when I found myself at that place, I said, I can't work under those conditions. And I see a lot of people who are leaving roles, like I said, the first year, 2 years. And I listened to a really great book last year or earlier this year, last year, called Inclusion Revolution. And one of the things that they talked about in that book is how DEI roles were commonly being offered to, and we know not all because we know what the numbers look like for the racial breakdown for folks who are doing DEI work, but they could be offered to women of color, to Black women, to Black, brown, or tan women, because it would lend better optics. But then when the women who got into those roles, knowing the things that they know about how the world works and the inequities that they face and that people like them would face, they would really want to bring about, these really big, grand, meaningful changes. And they would find that people just were not receptive to it because it didn't feel comfortable to them. And I think that is one of the things that makes this work a lot harder, is when you are a Black woman and you're trying to work with usually mostly white leadership to get them to understand the importance of this change. People are not always open to hearing that. And it was my experiences and the things that I saw, that was really what moved me into growth mindset work and looking at growth mindset and bias, and how learning to build your growth mindset could become a mitigator for bias in your decision making. Because it's, in that fixed mindset, it's people get uncomfortable, something challenges them, and there's nothing more interesting than explaining your very real lived experiences and having someone dismiss them, even though they're not even a Black person, so they don't know what it means to be a Black person in the world. They can only read about it. So it's an abstract concept to them, but they dismiss your lived experience because it interferes with their abstract thought about what they think it's like to be a Black woman walking through the world. And dealing with that and seeing that was one of the reasons for me. And I've seen it throughout my career, at more than one place where I've worked. And it was really one of the things that really got me thinking about mindset. And then I went down this rabbit hole because that's what I do. That's how my OCD works. I get, fascinated by something and I really want to learn a ton about it. And so I just really got into growth mindset. But I mean, that was probably 2019 when I first got into it. But yeah, it's difficult. And there's a lot of emotional labor that's involved, and it can be quite taxing. And I just always thought, if I have to choose between a paycheck or my mental health, I have the privilege, and it is a privilege, because of my spouse. I have the privilege of being able to say, I don't want to do that anymore. And having a husband who said, I support that. So it's hard if you feel like you don't have another choice that you can make that's going to be healthy for you.
So I agree. I think we've seen so many folks that are on both sides of it, right? Folks who are stepping away from the roles because, for their own well-being, but there's also, that's part of the very real context of the work these days, is so many of these roles are being cut. So many of these roles are being, defunded. There's so much of that going on today, and that's a huge part of, that's also part of taking care of ourselves. How are we ensuring that we're in a position so that, if that role does go away, whether it's our current role or whether it's, as an independent consultant, the work that's out there, in a lot of rooms I walk into today, DEI is a dirty word. And how are we preparing ourselves both for, other ways to do this work, other ways to talk about this work so that it doesn't go away, because the need is still there. And yes, each one of us has to decide in the moment, like, am I in a place right now where I can continue doing this work? If not, and you need to step back. How am I prepared to go forward? What skills do I have to fall back on? What position do I have to fall back on? And if we are going to move forward in this work, for those of us who are, how do we frame it in ways that we can keep doing the work that's needed and have a language to talk about it that's not, if we're in those environments where we kind of have to play that game if we want to try and move it forward in any way, how do we do that, right? How do we have the vocabulary? Do we have that sense of the work overall and how it contributes to the larger, that's, operations down to the people well-being, and in terms of how we can keep moving that forward. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the folks who are here with us. Before I turn over to the next question, Jay Palmer is here, and thank you for your comments. We've got Lisa Petroki-Merriman, Jackie Hallberg, thank you guys for commenting. A friend of mine, Luisa Lavo from Brazil, checking in. Willie Latigue, thank you for joining us. We're happy you're here as well. And Cooper Gates mentioned in the comments, actually tagged you. Tanasha was talking about, I thought that Leandra was talking about seasonal affective disorder, which hits a lot of us this time of year when the darkness sets in. And we're kind of talking about all of those things that are, the soup of everything that is kind of, that feels like we're moving through these days, right? When the air feels extra heavy, and the days kind of feel extra heavy. So just wanted to acknowledge those of you who are commenting. Thank you for being here. I think Chrystal, you talked about how this work needs to be a collective effort, right? And I think that that's a huge part of it too. Is finding ways to do this work so it's not just a single individual. When we talk about, so even if you do still have the position and your budget's being cut, that's one of the challenges that we're seeing in this work. Like how, with all of the stuff, all of the challenges that we see, how are we finding ways? How are you finding ways to keep going forward in this work? I know one of them, for me, like I mentioned, in a lot of spaces that I'm in, I have to find, it's kind of figuring out, when I can draw from the business case for the work, when I can have those deeper conversations about the wholeness, right? The holistic value of the work. And a different language. So I'm curious, because we are kind of in these places, not just talking about the challenges that are out there, but how are you finding ways, or hearing about other people finding ways to keep moving forward?
I think for me, I'll say that currently, I'm not with an organization, but with previous organizations, for me, it was just having the safe spaces of, for me, it was mainly external colleagues that were doing the DEI work, such as yourselves. And then even with other people in other industries, that was definitely important for me. And then keeping the conversations going, even though there may not have been like a formal group set up in organizations that I've worked at, but keeping the conversations going amongst the people that I was working with on a daily basis was really important. Whether it was from talking about something that's happened in the news that was race related, or, just having those genuine conversations of, what did you think about this? How are you feeling? How are you doing? How is this affecting you? What are your thoughts? Like just having those type of general conversations with people that are on my work teams, that definitely helped me personally, because it made me feel like, okay, well, you see me, or I see you, or you see something that may potentially affect me. Maybe it doesn't affect me, but potentially you're thinking of me enough to even ask me if it's affecting me and if I feel a way about it, some type of way about it. Just that whole connect really meant the most, and really seemed to help me over the years doing that type of work. And then, of course, like as we discussed before, seeking therapy from a professional therapist definitely was something that I utilized for sure.
And then just quickly piggybacking off of Chrystal's comments, I will say, as a certified HR professional, one thing we learn in our curriculum is to first stand back and assess the situation, and then come forward and figure out what people's motivations are. And I think going back to the pandemic, right, everyone was like, wash your hands, make sure you're standing away from folks for a little bit. But it's all things that we should have been doing anyway, even prior to the pandemic. And I think it's the same thing with DEI work. And what I mean by that is just taking some time to be mindful before you go into a room, maybe taking a deep breath, analyzing how you're feeling before approaching someone or going into a room, and maybe just saying the energy in the room is not energy that I have to adopt if I don't want to. So after you assess where you are and what your comfort level is, then going in, trying to understand what people's motivations are, and then seeing if there's a way that you can find common ground. And usually there's always common ground to be found. It's just a matter of taking time, not letting your emotions get the best of you, and thinking about the problem more so than the person. And I think for me, that has proved really helpful. There's always going to be some sort of conflict because we're humans, we have varied emotions, and that's just normal, that's okay. But it's just learning how to work through and overcome those emotions. And so I think in this work, especially, it's just about being mindful, being considerate of the other person you're talking to and their own beliefs, and not feeling like your beliefs are more important or stronger than their beliefs just because they're your own. But being open, as we say on our podcast, being open, staying curious, and listening and learning from other people are really what have helped me in my career journey.
Courtni, I wanted to piggyback on something you just said about the emotions and feeling them. I know that in the past, I've also, in situations where I felt a little too emotional, I would remove myself and allow myself to have some time to process my emotions. I consider myself to be pretty emotionally intelligent, so I know that if I'm feeling very emotional about something, I need to step back and give myself the space to process and to maybe come down off of those emotions before re-engaging back in the conversation. It's only happened a handful of times over the course of my career, but I will take myself out of it. I need a minute, give me 20 minutes, and I'll come right back into it and engage in the conversation. Because sometimes, doing this work, some things that people say can be super inflammatory, and it just doesn't serve anybody well. If I'm upset, they're upset, and I'm trying to respond to them while I'm still in that emotional state. So that's definitely one tool that I use too.
And something that I think is really important, especially, for everyone, but especially in my neurodivergent brain, is trying to identify those moments to take a break before I'm burnt out. So I've gotten to the point of burnout, and then when you take a 20-minute break, it's like 20 minutes have passed and I still feel the same and I'm still burned out. So I think it's really important to check in with oneself and give yourself the grace, and it's less about benefit of the doubt than it is grace to process things as they come, instead of being like, this is okay, and then having things compound later on and finding out like things are not okay and I'm too burnt out to recover. And eventually we do recover, but it takes a lot longer to bounce back from burnout than it does from that moment of acute overwhelm that happens in moments when people say outrageous things. And so I think that identifying those moments is definitely really important. And if you have the time and the opportunity to lean on other people, especially therapists, bless therapists, but coaches, mentors, community like the one we've created here, it's important to have kind of a sanity check, because this work can feel super lonely, especially because a lot of DEI departments are down to 1 or 2 people, and you are, kind of left to your own devices to say what it feels like save the world. And it's really important to be reminded that this work, while it can feel lonely, is not as lonely, and there are a lot of people who are struggling similarly, which is kind of bittersweet. But it's nice to know that you're not alone, and that there is support out there and people who have expertise where you don't. And I think that when I'm in my own head thinking that I need to conquer the world and know the answer to everything, I'm forgetting all of the expertise and all of the people that have gotten me to this place of knowledge, and how many people are available to be leaned on and are just waiting by their phones for me to finally need them. It's so easy to just want to take care of it yourself, but people want to take care of you often, like not take care of you in a hand-holding way forever, but people want to help, and leaning into that help, I think, is really important, and something that I'm still mastering, because it feels easier to just fake it until I make it. And so, yeah, it's a process. I think it's important to acknowledge that even people who seem like they have it together all the time sometimes struggle with needing others. And this is a group of people that I regard as just like amazing and experts and just like really great people in their field. And we still got struggles in the group chat. Like, we're still human behind the scenes. And I think sometimes we need to be human on camera, like right now, so people can be reminded that we're not struggling alone. It's hard out here. The world is there's joy out there, but there's also a lot of sorrow right now, and it's okay to feel that, but we can't stay in it if we don't have to. Yeah.
I have to say that was just beautiful, Leandra. I love that. That was wonderful. And I'm always so touched whenever the 5 of us are together and we're having these conversations, and we're being vulnerable with each other, and we're sharing these things. And I really think that vulnerability is such an important thing. People will treat it like a weakness. I have always looked at my ability to be vulnerable as a superpower, because you never have to guess where I am at. I will definitely let you know. And I always try to do so in ways, notice I said try, to do so in ways that are positive and meaningful. But we all have those times where we just need to get our thoughts out of our head, and we need to say things out loud to people that we know and people that we trust, and that's just so important. And I think the sense of community that we have built here, and I have been so shocked with the community that I have built on LinkedIn. I just never expected that. I was kind of a passive LinkedIn user, would use it a little bit when I was in a more traditional role before I switched over to consulting and public speaking. And the richness of the relationships that I have been able to build has, quite frankly, astounded me in wonderful ways. And when I have those moments where I feel like I just can't right now, I take so much comfort in knowing that there are all of these other wonderful people out here in the world, and the five of us here, and the people who are watching this podcast and this conversation right now. There are all of these other people where, when some of us are tired, you can take a moment, and then you have this community of people, and there are other people who are still really in this fight. Because you were saying earlier, Greta, about it being a marathon, and like multiple marathons. And it's because it really is not, it's not a race that we can ever really stop running. Like, for as long as we're here, we're going to be running this race. And then when our time on this earth comes to an end, 70 years from now, that's what I'm going for. 70 years from now, 80 years from now, there are going to be other people who are going to pick up that mantle and continue carrying it forward. So, I mean, it really, while it will end for us at some point, it will not end on this planet, because there are so many people who are so committed to this work and so invested in this work. And for me, I think about my children and the kind of world that I want for them, because it is one of the most terrifying things on the planet to have Black sons in the world. Especially a Black son who looks like he's in his teens or his 20s, but is really 5 years old. Like, it's terrifying. So for me, I will always look at doing this work and finding the energy sometimes when I don't have as much of it to keep moving forward, because I think about my kids and I think about other people's children, and I think about the kind of world that all of these wonderful people deserve and the opportunities that they deserve. And that really keeps me moving forward. And when I just get so tired, I'm okay with saying I need a break, because we have 4 Black women here in this space right now. And so for us, we're always operating against that strong Black woman trope, always operating against that. We're not, as Black women, we're not allowed to feel a full spectrum of emotion. If we're passionate about something, it means we're angry. If we assert ourselves, it means we're aggressive. I've been told at work not to talk about my education because it's intimidating. Is it? If I have a dual postgraduate education in psychology, wouldn't that mean I have knowledge of value that I can share to help move conversations along when that's relevant? So to say to someone when they introduce themselves, not to say their education when they're introducing them to people who don't know them, for me, it's a credibility issue. And that can be difficult sometimes for people to understand, because I feel like we live in a world where there's so much overconfidence bias. We see the Dunning-Kruger effect taking place all of the time. Everybody wants to be an expert in everything. I've been married to an engineer for 12 years now, together for 13 years, and we have never had a single fight about anything having to do with technology, because that is his wheelhouse. I have no problem deferring to people who are experts, who have expertise in areas that I do not have, because I look at that as an opportunity to learn from those folks. And I always welcome that, because I'm always trying to learn. As a Black woman, I have found I am not allowed under any circumstances to be viewed as an expert in anything. I can't even be an expert in my own Black experience. And that's kind of sad. And that is one of the things that leads to those feelings of exhaustion, because you're just hoping, to be understood. And so that's why it's so important to have a community of people that you surround yourself with, or with whom you surround yourself, who can provide, really meaningful validation for you. I get so much validation from hearing stories from other people about things they've gone through in their career. And I go, oh my gosh, that happened to me. Because sometimes we think that we're alone in what we're experiencing. Just like Leandra was saying earlier, you can feel like you're alone, or like it's all on you. And so when I see other people going through those things too, I'm like, whew, it is bittersweet. It's nice to not feel alone, though. So I think the relationships that we build, within our clients, within our places of business, within these communities, like the community we have here, it really does make all the difference.
Thank you. Before I go back and recap some of the things that we talked about, I do want to mention Katrina shared and on our LinkedIn comments, shared a resource called Burnout, The Secret of Unlocking the Stress Cycle. So for those of you who can't see that particular link, that looks like a great resource to check out. And probably a great resource for a lot of us who are doing the work these days. And on a related comment, Cooper talked about whether identifying whether somebody's on the way to burnout, the consequences, or whether or not we're checking in on ourselves and checking in with those around us along the way. He used the comparison, comparing it to a major engineering project that failed, and kind of doing that check back to try to figure out where things failed, where the failures happened. What does it say? Oh, and what could have been saved if adequate testing or rebuilding or repairs had been performed along the way. So I think that that's a great way to think about it, and a great way to think about the self-care that we need. Thank you, Katrina. She said the link that she shared here, which is will show up in our event on LinkedIn, We can share that to the YouTube and Facebook as well. That the link that she shared will help somebody find a copy in a library near you. So thank you so much. That's a fantastic resource.
Greta, can I just say that's Katrina. That's
oh, thank you.
friend of mine. Yeah, Katrina. She's a librarian, and she does a lot of work on burnout and abuse in the workplace, I should say.
Fantastic reference.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for helping me get her name right, Katrina.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
And yay for librarians. I just have to say that. Librarians
Absolutely.
are just some of my favorite people. When I was a kid, librarians made life so wonderful for me. So I love some librarians. I'm here for it. So thank you, Kate.
Same.
I think, see, these are the conversations we have. And that's how we ended up doing this podcast, right? Is so, like, I think all of us came in tonight like, like it was so heavy, feeling so heavy and feeling so much. And despite all of that, like I'm hearing so much hope in these conversations anyway. And I think so many of the things that I'm hearing are reflective of both the things that we work with other people on to prepare them to do this work, right? Whether that's leaders we're working with, other folks in the workplace, are some of the same things that we ourselves need. Tanasha, you always talk about, the growth mindset. We talked about the importance of mindfulness. Courtni, you talked about being mindful when you're walking into a room, and being mindful of the space itself. And it's got me kind of thinking too about a lot of those really basic things that again, we know some of the basic skills people need in order to help move this work forward. That curiosity, humility, self-awareness, those skills and capacities that we have to help people further develop, and more reasons that we need to take care of ourselves so that we can continue to build ourselves and build and maintain those capacities within ourselves. I think, Chrystal, you also talked about emotional intelligence. We've all kind of talked about self-regulation and the importance of that and how hard that is in varying contexts, especially those with more marginalized identities, further marginalized identities. Like in one way, in some of these spaces, I struggle with that myself, right? As a white woman doing this work, you talked about being vulnerable. A couple of you talked about being vulnerable in this work. And in most of the spaces that I'm in, I have fewer marginalized identities than people I'm working with, right? So as a white woman, so I sometimes have to struggle, right? It takes a while to build that sense with groups that I'm in of when and where it's appropriate for, that's also part of that self-awareness, right? And getting to know and trust and build rapport and kind of understand the context about when and where it's, so you're not walking in and dumping on people, right? So that's a line that I'm very conscientious of, that I walk, and sometimes I err on the side of not sharing as much as I could. Sometimes appropriately so, and sometimes more so. So I appreciate the reminder, and again, just one more reason I'm grateful for this group. And I think that these conversations are so important for us to continue to share with other folks. So we are so close. We're almost at the end. What I'd really like to do, if you guys are open to it, is just kind of, we're 2024 is like right there, right? It is right around the corner. And there are so many so many challenges to this work right now. And still, here we are. Is there something that you're taking with you? What is something that you're taking with you into 2024 that either you want to focus on to help you keep doing the work, or an aspect of the work that you see as a possible focus? What's a focus for 2024? I think for myself, because I'm gonna, before I put you guys on the spot, I feel like I should have to come up with an answer myself. So what am I doing? I am working on vulnerability. I'm feeling called out on that a little bit, and feeling like that's a good place for me to start. So
I'd have to say vulnerability for me too. I still don't feel, if I'm being transparent, I still don't feel safe enough to be my vulnerable, authentic self. You know, that was a buzzword for this year, being your authentic self at work, bring your whole self to work. I still don't feel like I could do that as a Black female living in this country. And so I really struggle with that. Even more so than somebody who is just navigating this world. And of course, you can trust some people and not trust others, but it's just intensely much more difficult as a Black female to do that in workspaces. And I'm challenging myself not only to do that within workspaces, but within other spaces, other life spaces as well. So that's something that I definitely need to try to do better with.
I agree. I want to lean into the help that other people are offering. I think it's hard to be vulnerable, and I want to be strong, and I want to be the helper and the fixer. And sometimes the strong person needs someone to lean on as well. Additionally, I would like to take taking intentional time off that isn't scheduled around doctor's appointments or duress. I just want to schedule some time off because I can. And I think that's something that I want everyone to take into 2024. Like, if there's time to be taken off, it's so important to take time for yourself, whether it is an hour or a whole day. Making intentional time for myself that is not just based around needing to recover once I've already gone too far.
Take a week, Leandra.
Girl, take two. Tell them I said it's okay. I would say for me, the thing that I definitely want to take into 2024 is just continuing to kind of get my message out there and share with people, just understanding a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, and how that can help mitigate bias in your decision making. Because I think there's some opportunity to embrace some discomfort that will happen naturally in conversations about difficult topics like racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia. And those things can be very triggering for some people to even hear those words. And so learning to embrace that growth mindset is just something that I'm so incredibly passionate about. And so I really want to take that passion into 2024 and just continue public speaking about that particular topic, and really kind of spreading the word and giving people permission to accept that bias is a part of how our brains function. There is no shame in having bias in your brain. Your brain's just trying to get to quicker decision making. The important piece is slowing down your decision making so that you can counteract the bias in your decision making. So just trying to give people more grace and getting them to give themselves more grace and sharing that message definitely for 2024.
Well, I love what everyone has said. For 2024, I think, to your point, Tanasha, and I believe Leandra, you also mentioned just granting yourself grace in 2024 and for my friends out there who are unable to take off for whatever reason, whether you have shift work or whether your job requires you to be physically present, I am going to focus more on mindfulness in 2024. And so what that could look like for maybe some of our viewers, even myself, is just taking a moment. So if you are able to commute to work, or if you drive or take a bike, whatever the case might be, but just being reflective of the scenery, being reflective of how you're feeling in that moment, and just finding different ways to show gratitude and be grateful for the things you have. Because what I found is it's very difficult to have a negative spirit when you are showing gratitude towards someone or yourself or something. So I'm going to start taking more of that into 2024, more in my interactions with people, more in interactions with myself. I think 2023, I've put a lot of pressure on myself, as I think most of us have. We always do. It's really grind, grind, grind. But sometimes it's okay to just take a break, and it's okay not to constantly have your hand in 50 different buckets. It's okay to say, I'm just going to focus on these two, and I'm just going to be the best I can at these two initiatives or whatever I'm starting. So I think in 2024, my focus will be on that. And then additionally, I will be focusing on movement more in 2024. I sit a lot. And so I do need to start moving my body a little bit more and just being kinder to my physical body. So if anyone else out there has any tips you'd like to drop in the comments, I would love to hear them. Even if you're not able to drop them before we go off live, feel free to connect with any of us on LinkedIn. But yep, that's what I'll be doing in 2024 this year. And hopefully some of you all can join me.
And rest is productive. I have to say that. Rest is productive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Courtney, wish you could join me. I just restarted my pool physical therapy. So thankfully that's something that I highly recommend for anybody who can. Anybody who has access to a pool. It's a 90-degree pool, so that helps a lot. But I love that. Movement, vulnerability, gratitude. Gratitude. I love that. And I am so grateful for this group. Thank you all for showing up, for being yourselves, for being your fantastic, fantabulous selves. And that concludes the second episode of DEI Unmasked, Conversations That Bridge. We hope you found value in the conversation, as we know we're always learning from and feeding one another along the journey that is this work in DEI. As we wrap up, we would love to hear from you. Your thoughts, questions, and suggestions will help guide the direction of this podcast. Unmasking is an ongoing journey, and with each episode, we take a step closer to fostering a more inclusive, understanding world. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and keep unmasking the world around you. Thanks, everyone.